Hello, this is Tom Steins with Kerr Consulting, and in this video I'm going to show how to use X3 standard functionality to create a value that we can use to change behavior for certain users. What we're going to do is create a general parameter and set up a default value for the folder, and then we can go in and override that default value for certain users. And then we can use that value, that general parameter, in our code to determine who has permissions to do certain activities within X3. So what we're going to do to kind of show the big picture, first of all, let's go to parameter values. And we're going to create a new parameter in the sales module, VEN. So I'll go down to the VEN chapter. We're going to look at the folder. And then the group we want to put this in is the authorizations group, and we're going to create a new value in here. We're going to call Y cutoff time, and what we're going to use this for is we're going to create a value for allowing certain users, managers, to override the cutoff time in a sales order screen. So we're going to create a new parameter, and then we can read this parameter in our code to determine who has permissions to override the default behavior. So we're going to go up to the development module, and we're going to create a new parameter first of all. So you can go and search for parameters down here. I usually just go through the chapters until I get to the VEN. And then here's all our groups within the VEN chapter. And one thing I'll point out, we want to be able to override this parameter at the user level. Not all of the parameter groups are shown on the user screen. Some of these groups are set up at a higher level at the site or the folder, so you can't see those at the user's level. I know that the authorization group is visible at the user level, so the group authorizations has been set up to be at the user level, so we can use this for our new parameter. So we can come here. I'd usually just clone an existing parameter, change things around a little bit to fit my need, and then go from there. But I'm going to take a little tangent and talk about some of the behavior in X3. So number one, you can tie these parameters to global variables, and so that you can use the global variable in your code rather than calling a lookup on the parameter. It makes it a little bit easier, a little bit flexible in your code. So an example here is that authorized manual order hold. So you can use this global variable in your code on the sales order screen rather than calling the parameter. So that's just a little bit easier. But when you do it this way, and that's why I want to talk about different behavior in X3, to set this global variable, X3 calls the script. And they call the script when you log in. And that is why that X3 says that whenever you change one of the parameter values, log out and log back in. So that script gets kicked off and those global variables get refreshed. It's kind of frustrating sometimes. You go in and change a parameter, and sometimes it works right away, your screen functionality changes. Other times you have to log out, log back in. Well, it's because of these global variables. If X3 is storing these parameters in global variables, you have to get that script to kick off to get your global variable to update. So you have to log out and log back in. So you never know, you never remember which parameters are tied to global variables, so it's always safer to log out and log back in to make sure that you've reloaded the changes from your parameter values into the global variables. So just kind of a tangent on how X3 works. We're not going to use a global variable. Obviously, the more global variables you create, the more overhead you have. So we're not going to do that for this situation. We're just going to create a parameter, and we're going to call a function in code that will look up the value of the parameter for us. So what we want to do is clone this parameter. I'm just going to call it Y cutoff. And it actually loaded because I've been playing around with this and it already exists. So site cutoff time override. Now there are about 4 parameters you have to change on here to get this to work correctly. First of all is what level you want to define this parameter at. How far down do you want to go? Do you want to do it just at the folder, the company, the site, or the user? Well, we want to create this at the user level, so we're going to specify user. That's number 1. You can have your data type for this parameter. Local menus, alphanumeric, date. Now we're going to do a local menu, and of course you could set up your own custom local menu if you wanted to. I'm using local menu 1, which is the yes or no option. Of course, you want to tie this parameter to an activity code for protecting it and also documentation purposes. But one other thing, when you define this at the user level, you probably also always want to create a folder default value, and we definitely do in this situation. we want the folder default value to be no, and that's what every user is going to inherit by default as a no value. But then we can go in and override that value at a user level if we want to. So our parameter is wide cutoff, and we also can set a folder default value. So once we get the parameter set up, we will go ahead and create it. I've already created it, so we didn't have to do that step. But now that it's set up, we can go into the normal X3 definition screen, go look at parameter values, and we go down to our sales chapter. We look at our company setup under folder, and then we go into the authorization group, and we will see our Y cutoff time override, and the default value is no. So that's what everyone gets by default, is no. So we can save this and close this. And then the last step on setting this parameter up for us is to go into the users and override it at a user level. So let's just go and choose the normal ERP user in this situation. We go to the parameters tab, and again, here's the parameters that can be defined at the user level. Not every parameter is here, but the Venn sales is an option. We'll go to the bottom of the screen. There it is, sales authorizations. So we can look at the detail. And then here is the defaults for this user. You can see the default is reading from the folder level, and the default is no. So if ERP is a manager and we want them to have the ability to override the site cutoff time, we would just come in here, pop up the list, and say, yep, they have the time, save it. Now we're done with the setup. And then to use this in code, what we need to do is, since we didn't tie this to a global variable, we have to make a function call. We have to call the param function, actually the param util function, because there's two parameters. There's one or two function calls to read parameters. This first one, param, just reads a general site or folder parameter, but this param util reads it at the user level, goes down to the user permissions, and that's what we want to call in our situation. So we pass in the parameter name, which in our situation is Y cutoff. Here's the variable we want the return result to come back to us in, the username, and the site value, which we would get from the sales order screen. So we pass these parameters in, it'll show us the setting for that user. If it comes back as yes, and then we can allow them to override the site cutoff time. If it comes back with no or a value of 1, they don't have the permission and they cannot override the site cutoff time. We would give them a warning message saying, hey, this order is invalid. You have to change the date or have the manager override your cutoff time. And so that's how you set up X3 to create a new parameter and then use that parameter at the user level and then call that parameter in code with this function call. So that concludes this video. Thank you.